Hello, thank you for joining us. Welcome to the South Central Partnership for Energy Efficiency as a resource. This webinar is supported by the City Efficiency Leadership Council, as well as the State Energy Conservation Office. I'm Sean Auckland. I'm with the Local Government Program Manager at SPEAR, and I will be hosting and moderating the question and answer portion of the webinar. A little bit about SPEAR. SPEAR is an acronym for South Central Partnership Energy Efficiency as a resource. And we are one of 6 regional energy efficiency organizations in the nation. SPEAR covers Texas and Oklahoma. And what we do is our work is policy with advocacy and education and resources on resolutions to how you can further code and having that approved through your council or your commissioner's court or through the state. We also have a program on building codes, including trainings and free trainings for local governments, as well as high performance buildings program, and is of course the local government program that I manage, including the city's Efficiency Leadership Council. Our membership ranges from advocacy organizations, cities, counties, state agencies, trade associations, and utilities. And what a CELC is we focus on bringing together, even though cities is in the name, bringing together school districts, higher education, government entities such as water districts, PUDs, and then bringing everyone together for engaging in partnership and resource exchange. And I host several roundtables, webinars, and then also workshops and trainings. How you can get more involved is just reach out to me. I'll put my email in the chat, but you can just reach out, and we have just a short little application process to become one of the local governments to participate in this council. And part of some of the benefits is also discounts to events, conferences, and trainings. And anyone can join CELC, so any staff at a public jurisdiction can be a part of the organization. So a few announcements before we get started in our presentation. We are offering CEUs today, and you must fill out the survey. So and if you call in, just whenever you fill out the survey, please provide your phone number so that I can provide you continuing education units for attending and spending time at this event. You do have to attend the live version. We can't provide you continuing education units for watching the recording. So just be aware of that. And you have to attend most of the session to receive the credit. We have a chat box here and also question and answer. You all are muted, but you can raise your hand, and at the end of the webinar, when we do move into that part of the webinar with questions and answers, I can unmute you all and we can actually have a conversation, and you can use your own voice to ask the questions. But I'm also happy to ask the questions to Deb if you have any. As well as if there's any announcements that you want to share or questions, again, put them in a chat box. And hopefully you know how to use that, but what you do is you go over to your toolbar and there'll be a little bubble and it says chat, and that's where you click. And there's also questions and answers, and you can go over to that bubble as well, and that's where you can put your questions. And then, again, we will have a survey, and please take time to fill that out so you can help us improve these webinars, as well as we just like to have more information to understand who you are, where you're coming from, and why you were attending an event like this. All right, well, I'd like to introduce our speaker today, Dub Taylor. He is the Chief Operating Officer at the Texas Space Authority. He joins Texas Space Authority after 21 years as the director of the Texas State Energy Conservation Office, known as SECO. Under his leadership, SECO helped the state make the most domestic energy make the most of domestic energy, reduce state and local government energy costs, and promote cost-effective clean energy technologies. I know every time I talk to him, I always learn something new, and it is always fantastic. He's an amazing resource to energy efficiency industries and professionals. Prior to joining CECO, his public sector experience included 6 years with the Texas Railroad Commission's Alternative Fuels Research and Education Division, and private sector experience was focused in commercial real estate, property appraisal, and property tax consulting. He's a native of Dallas and a graduate of the University of Texas at Austin. Deb, you can go ahead and cue up your presentation, and we look forward to learning more about PACE.
Great. Thank you, Sean. Can you see my screen okay there?
Yes, I can.
Perfect. Thank you. So glad you could join us this morning, and we're going to talk about PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy Financing, and how PACE is a great tool to facilitate community reinvestment and advancements toward to gains in environmental goals. So that's really kind of the focus today, but I'll provide some follow-on resources, and obviously we'll have some question and answer opportunity at the end, and should have sufficient time to cover all that. So jumping right into it, Sean she covered this in the intro. Very generous, thank you. And PACE is interesting because while I did spend almost 30 years in the public sector, focused on energy efficiency, clean energy technology deployment, public sector project financing. Prior to that, I was in the private sector essentially in the commercial real estate and property management business. And PACE draws those two worlds together because it really is a public program to facilitate reinvestment in private commercial real estate. So it's interesting that I landed in this spot, and it's been very exciting over the last couple of years. So the problem that PACE is designed to address is this one. And that is that business owners know that over the long term that they can save money by making investments in their buildings to save energy or water. But these can be complicated and expensive and also potentially disruptive to the space and how it's used. And then also it's hard to pay for these renovations and upgrades given all the other expenses. Even if a business has the capital to make these investments, this is probably not their first priority. They typically will reinvest in things that grow the business, increase throughput, increase profit, versus making investments that decrease inputs or decreased operating costs. So the result is these projects just don't get done. We have in Texas historically a pretty low energy cost, and many businesses feel, well, energy, that's kind of a rounding error in the budget compared to some other costs. But I can tell you that is changing, and it's changing very quickly. As you witnessed when you fill your car up at a gas pump, prices are going up in Texas. Energy is no longer cheap. The commodity cost is up and will stay up and go higher. The fixed charges for transmission for electricity are going up and will stay higher. A lot of the grid investments to help ensure that what happened a year and a half ago with the winter storm Uri and outages never happens again. Those costs all get lifted up to ratepayers. So our costs are going up, and these investments make more sense today than they ever have. So by not replacing equipment, inevitably what happens is your air conditioning, your chiller goes out in June or July, not in December. You call your contractor, they come and replace it or fix it. It may not be the system that you would have specified if you had more time. And it's also going to cost you a premium because of that emergency replacement nature. And then if you're not addressing a building as a system, you're just looking at component by component, you don't really have full optimization. So you're missing efficiency optimization opportunities. You're inevitably going to be costing more money to operate the building. You're going to compromise temperature, productivity, things like that. Then in the case of new construction, whenever you put together a project budget, the things that are behind the walls typically get cut first. It's kind of like they say, with a home, what sells a home is, marble countertops and stainless steel appliances. The equipment in the attic, no one sees. So that's where the budget gets cut first. And unfortunately, it's those choices at the front end with budget cutting that wind up either hampering or haunting a building through its useful life, or helping it. And that this concept of value engineering, I put value in quotes because it's not good value. It's really short-sighted. So again, PACE can help with this. So again, PACE, Property Assessed Clean Energy, is what the acronym stands for. And what's really missing at the end is an F, because this is financing. It's a financing structure, a financing tool that provides 100% financing for certain types of energy efficiency, water conservation, distributed generation projects. This is private financing, and because PACE is a publicly enabled program, there's often confusion that these are government dollars that are going to fund these projects, or that a city or a county is providing funding. That is not the case. The city or the county essentially provides a conduit for financing, for private financing. So these are private dollars that can come from any lender. This could be a PACE capital specialty provider. This could be a conventional bank. This could be any sort of private capital. But essentially, it's a private transaction that's facilitated through a governmental process. That's really the key here. PACE is authorized under state law. In 2013, a bill passed and Local Government Code Chapter 399 was established, the Texas PACE Act. In that act, it provided the authority for local governments, cities and counties specifically, municipalities and counties, to establish PACE programs individually if they decided that they wanted to do that. So not a mandate, really a permission or authorization, and then local governments decide if they want to offer PACE or not. It's voluntary and it's open market. That means that any property owner with an eligible property could utilize PACE. Any contractor could do the work. Any capital provider or lender can provide the financing. Again, PACE just ties it all together. So there's not a prescriptive or pre-qualified list that you have to choose from if you're a property owner. And as far as eligibility, any commercial building, again, privately owned, and this can include nonprofits. We'll see a case study of one of those later. In fact, the first project in the state is a nonprofit. Can be used for multifamily, so apartment buildings, at least 5 units or more, or industrial or manufacturing projects or properties rather. The only thing that PACE cannot be used for is single family residential or residential 4 units or smaller. So anything above that, size-wise or in these property classifications is eligible. And as far as the projects themselves, if the project can reduce energy or water usage or demand or generate energy on site, then it is something that's potentially eligible. And so these are examples of specific projects, both that are eligible and that we've seen in projects in different PACE closing projects. So on the energy side, HVAC, obviously lighting upgrades, building management systems, building envelope improvements. So what we're talking about there, a new reflective roof, enhanced insulation, could be, window replacements in some cases, renewable energy systems of any type, as well as distributed generation systems. So combined heating and power, that qualifies if you have a need for the thermal energy provided by a CHP system. Combustion and burner upgrades, that's mostly industrial. And then a whole host of things on the water side, including rainwater capture, high efficiency irrigation equipment, lots of different things. So not a prescriptive list, but essentially if it is something that can be proven to reduce energy or water usage or generate energy on site, then that's potentially eligible for PACE. So how has PACE worked over the years? I mentioned in 2013, that's when the enabling legislation passed. And to date, we've had $223 million of PACE investment, so almost $250 million statewide. And it's really been this sort of straight line growth. 2015, as things were just getting rolling, nothing really happening then, and then it's increased ever since. And we've had about $35 million in projects that have closed this year alone already, with many more in the pipeline. And the types of properties that are being improved through PACE, about a third of them are commercial and retail, about 15% hospitality, and that's the next biggest wedge, then commercial office. Nonprofits, pretty significant there, multifamily and education. And as far as the project types themselves, about half of these are energy efficiency, about a third water conservation, 12% distributed generation. And so why PACE, and why is this different from other financing alternatives? If you look at the graph on the left, or the illustration on the left, excuse me, this shows really a conventional financing scenario. So if you're a property owner and you recognize, hey, I need to replace my HVAC, my lighting, whatever it may be, and I either don't have the capital, or again, I don't have capital prioritized for these projects, you knock on your lender's door and say, here's what I want to do. And they say, great, you're a great customer. We want to support you. That is an equipment loan. And our equipment loans are 20% down, 5 years, 5-year term. And in today's market, say, 5.5% to 6% interest. The challenge with that is the savings from the project accrue over a pretty long period of time. Usually the useful life of the equipment, 15, 20 years. But if you're repaying the equipment loan over a 5-year period, your payments, your cost for that project is much higher than the savings in that first 5-year period. So from a cash flow standpoint, you're upside down financially. And this is preventing a lot of this investment, because obviously you've got to dip into your budget elsewhere for this debt service. What makes PACE different is that by having a local assessment secure the financing, now a lender is willing to make a loan over a much longer period of time, such that the savings equal the costs in each year and over the life of the equipment. So it really knocks that repayment rectangle, or if you will, over on its side, and your increased net operating income is a result of that. So this makes the projects cash flow positive day one, and again through their useful life. So that's really the key with PACE, is the alignment of the benefits to the cost over time. Some of the investment barriers that have prevented these kind of investments for efficiency and water: no upfront capital. You don't need that for PACE, because unlike conventional financing that requires some sort of down payment, there is no down payment. This can be 100% financing. Again, short-term financing in a conventional scenario versus PACE, which is up to the useful life of the equipment, 100% financing. This is a non-recourse loan. So basically it's an assessment secured loan, meaning that the financing is tied to the property, not to the owner. In the case of a rental property, there's always this challenge of split incentives between landlords and tenants. A PACE loan and the debt service of that is considered an operating cost, which your typical lease agreements allow for pass-through to the tenants. So the tenants get improved space, improved lighting, better air conditioning, better temperature control, and then through their lease are paying for a portion of that investment. And then short-term ownership in a lot of commercial buildings, an owner might buy and hold it for a couple of years and flip it, maybe get the occupancy up and then sell it. So there's a disincentive for them to make an investment that they can't see a return on completely within 2 or 3 years. In the case of PACE, because this is an assessment tied to the property, not to the owner that secures it, the PACE loan or the PACE assessment conveys with ownership. So the first owner that initiates it, say they hold the property for 5 years, they get 5 years of benefit, they pay 5 years of debt service. The next buyer assumes that and pays their 5 years, and so on and so on. The loans can be paid off when the property changes hands, and we have seen it both ways. So that's really a key feature as well. So I mentioned that PACE is state authorized and local government enabled, and we now have 78 local PACE programs across the state. The blue shaded areas of the map and the dots are the cities and counties that have adopted PACE. If you total all these up and look at current census information, while this does look like kind of a patchwork, the the cities that have active and counties that have active PACE programs cover 72% of the population. So most of the major population centers are covered, as well as many outlying areas in rural communities. And how does a local government set up PACE? There is a very specific process that's outlined in the enabling legislation, and it really works like this. The city or the county considers this. They may have heard of this from a counterpart in another area, and they usually will conduct some sort of a public briefing. This is either at a commissioner's court meeting or a city council meeting. We are frequently asked to come in and provide these briefings. They make these open, as something that the public can participate in as well. But that's optional. That's not required. But in almost every case, that happens. The second step is to post a report on how the PACE program will work. We have those documents all set up for uniformity. So this is not something you don't have to reinvent the wheel if you're a city or a county. We have these reports. They basically can be tailored to the city or county, just plugging in names as well as the jurisdictional boundaries. The third piece is to pass a resolution of intent, and this would be a formal action by the commissioner's court or by the council. What this does is in it says we're considering establishing a PACE program, and there will be a public hearing on such and such date. That's really the key of this step 3. Step 4, and again, this is required in enabling legislation. There's a public hearing. So any member of the public has an opportunity to comment. Usually there's not much activity as far as members of the public. Oftentimes you might hear a property owner that has a property within the city or the county that is interested in PACE, and they may speak about the project specifically and how they intend to use PACE. So usually those go pretty smoothly. And then fifth is at that same hearing, they can then establish a resolution to establish the program. And there's form documents, again, that we have for all of this, so there's no need to reinvent the wheel. And then the sixth step is really where we come in, and that's to select an administrator. Cities and counties that want to offer PACE don't really want to create a whole new PACE department or PACE division to run them. And so we serve really as that outsourced governmental function to help support PACE. So the benefits for local government, why would they do this? This supports local workforce and economic development. These are local jobs contracting to do the work. It also helps improve the local building stock. This is really a nice complement to Main Street and other programs that are taking, what have become sort of derelict buildings and bring them back into use, not only from an aesthetic perspective, but from a energy and water and mechanical systems perspective. If a business is looking to move somewhere else or expand because they feel that that there may be a more attractive option, again, this is a tool in the toolkit a city or county can use so that that business can add to their facility or renovate it or update it and utilize PACE to support part of that upgrade work. Indirectly, PACE helps support better air quality. About 75% of our electricity is still generated by combusting fossil fuels, which result in emissions, both local and regional. So every unit of power we don't use means a unit of fuel that's not consumed and a unit of emissions that's not produced. Obviously, direct energy and water conservation, so lightening the load on the grid during times of peak demand and preserving water resources as the population of the state continues to grow and our water resources don't. And again, this can all be done with really no local government obligation for creating new staff or systems or anything else. And really, we just usually work with a single point of contact with the city or the county. And so this doesn't involve a lot of engagement ongoing. So again, our role, Texas PACE Authority, we are a nonprofit. We were created 7 years ago to really fill this gap. As I mentioned, cities and counties said, yeah, we want to start PACE, but we really don't want to create a new bureaucracy or cost to the city or the county. And so nothing was happening until we formed, or Texas PACE Authority was formed to really serve this governmental function. And I always see ourselves as kind of a referee or an official in the transaction. We work with property owners, their service providers, and their capital providers to make sure that the project that's being proposed meets all the requirements under state law and the local program guidance. But we have no other direct role in the project. We don't provide the funding. We don't do the contracting work. Obviously, we don't own the property. So it's really that outsourced governmental function that is all we do. So kind of a quick overview here on the process. So a building owner would say, yes, I'm interested in this. There is a PACE program that's available for my county or for my city where my building is located. They identify a contractor. They determine what the scope of work for the project would be. They then identify a capital provider, one or more. Maybe they could have them bid or provide different quotes on interest rates or term sheets. And then they apply to the PACE program. They say, we've got a project, we've got all these pieces lined up. At that point, our organization, on behalf of the city or the county, reviews everything to make sure that it is aligns from an eligibility perspective. If it does, then the owner signs a contract with the city or the county's PACE program that places a senior lien on the property. This is where the assessment piece comes in. And that senior lien serves as the security for the lender to provide a much longer term loan than they ordinarily would. The capital provider, lender, then signs a contract with the county or the city in exchange for the assessment payments. So the payments go directly from the owner to the lender. And in some states, this becomes a new line item on the tax bill. In Texas, that's not the way it's set up because many of the tax assessors express concern about adjusting their systems to accommodate, these sort of one-off transactions and the costs that might incur. So contractually, we do the same thing in Texas as adding it to the tax bill, but in our case, the payments go directly to the lender, so they don't go through the local government at all. The capital provider lender provides the funding. The contractor then moves and completes the project. And then again, the owner sends the installment payments directly to the lender. All of this is outlined in program guidance that we have available. The version on the left has been in place since 2018. It needed updates. Some things have changed. So we have a new version 4.0 on the right that will soon be released, probably as soon as next week or the week after. It's in final form, and we're getting some final comments on that. So everything you need to know about how PACE works is contained there. And as far as the project development, this is where most of the questions come in. So we spent a lot of time in section 1 of our program guide walking through each of these steps. And I'll cover them briefly. So step 1, and we talked about this a little already, is to ensure that the project and the property are eligible. Step 2 is working to define the scope of work with contractors for what the project is being proposed. Step 3, working with a capital provider. Step 4, again, making sure that the contractor you're working with capable of doing the work. You do this anyway. Step 5, prepare the application. And typically underwriting from the time the application is submitted is 30 to 60 days for these loans. That's about the time frame. The next step, step 6, if there is a mortgage on the property, then consent is required from that mortgagee, that mortgage holder, for a PACE loan, because this becomes senior. But unlike a second loan, this is a governmental assessment. So it's really tax level status. And in the event of a default, the loan is not called in, only the payments and arrears are due. So it doesn't accelerate like a conventional loan. So this is always, if there's a mortgage on the property, there's a bit of an education process for that mortgage holder, and we will take the lead on that to help help bring them up to speed on why this is not just another loan. This is actually a different type of a product. Next, step 7, and this is really for the protection of the owner and the lender. In Texas, ITPR, this stands for Independent Third-Party Reviewer. A licensed Texas engineer is required to review the project proposed savings and scope. This is an engineer that's selected by the owner. This is to make sure that what's being proposed by a contractor is realistic, and that the savings that are being projected, are also realistic and should cover the costs. Step 8, close on the financing. Step 9, construct the project. And then step 10, again, the ITPR, this Texas licensed engineer, reviews what has been installed to make sure that the owner is getting what they're paying for, and that the project should work as intended. So those are kind of the 10 steps of the project development process. Some key updates that we've covered in our program guide update. Number 1, redevelopment. This is really, it's called redevelopment, but if you have an existing lot that has a building or a structure on it, you've cleared that structure and now you're building something from scratch, new foundation, new utilities, everything, redeveloping that property. That can be done. And in the case of even a green field, a lot that has never been developed, if a project is staged or phased, where say the parking lot is completed first with striping and curbing and lights and so forth, and that property is now considered developed, then even that green field could be eligible for PACE purposes. Look back. This is really refinancing. So if a project otherwise meets all PACE criteria and has been completed, then you have up to 2 years after completion where PACE can be used to refinance, often at lower rates or better terms than maybe the financing that's in place. We have had a lot of property owners, after a project's completed, say, gosh, I wish I had known about PACE earlier, but I've already financed the project. Well, it's possible to refinance it through PACE, again, if the project otherwise would meet the PACE criteria. This next bullet here, LTV. LTV stands for loan to value. So, a lot of times if you're looking at if you think about a conventional mortgage, a lender, might lend 80% up to 80% of the value. You put in 20%. For PACE, you can use PACE for up to 25% of the value. So it's a more conservative approach so that owners don't get overextended. And we look at the value as the as complete or improved value. So say the property today is worth $500,000. You put a $500,000 PACE project on top of that. Now you have $1 million total. So you could finance, basically half that. So 25%. So $250,000. So LTV is it used to be 20%. Now it's 25%. The other component here, savings to investment ratio at the bottom, SIR. So we again look at the savings that are projected for the life of the improvements and compare that to the cost of the project, and that has to be 1 or greater. The SIR does. And half of that savings has to be energy or water related. So utility bill reductions, avoided costs associated with maintenance agreements maybe that are no longer needed because you're replacing old equipment with new equipment. That all has to be at least 50%. The other half can be financial savings. So tax credits, accelerated depreciation, other purely financial benefits that are cash to the owner can make up the other half of the savings piece. So that's spelled out as well. So how do we know that the projects save energy or water? All of the analysis is based on national accepted standards for this type of work. Energy engineers that do this type of analysis rely on different protocols that are common. So this is not a sort of a clean sheet, set of requirements. These are known industry standards. And then on the ITPR, again, the qualifications that this has to be a Texas licensed PE. Now the contractor does not have to be a professional engineer, and the contractor that's helping develop the scope of work does not have to be a PE, but the ITPR does. And again, we look for folks that have good experience in the area. A structural engineer that only works on roads and bridges probably is not who you're looking for. But typically this is a mechanical or electrical engineer that's done this sort of analysis. And the technical standards that they would use for project evaluation is we have that spelled out in a separate manual that's more technical in nature. So the project itself, the process, this is sort of a condensed version of how it works. So the contractor does an energy or water analysis for the project based on the scope of work. The ITPR reviews that. This is a desk review. Sometimes it's a site review as well. Project moves into construction, and then after it's done, the ITPR comes back and does a verification of the installation. And again, the owner selects the contractor and the ITPR. We are starting to this is a new thing, online training. Obviously, there's a lot of moving parts with PACE, and while a lot of the underlying approaches are pretty well known, the specifics around PACE may be new. So we do a lot of training anyway, but we're also launching this online training that's going to be 3 different modules. And this is really targeted towards service providers, so contractors, engineers, lenders, et cetera. 3 modules about PACE, kind of the background, the legal basis. Then we move into the standards, the technical standards and program guidance, and then sort of a step-by-step of how to assemble a project. There'll be 3 videos that you watch. After each one, there are questions and a training quiz. If you pass it 80%, so 20 questions right, then you can be listed on our website as a trained service provider. And then we provide a logo or a badge for your website as well. So we've had a lot of call for training like this. It can be done sort of on a self-paced online virtual basis, and that should be up and running in June, so just next month. So let's talk about the projects. The projects that have closed, again, urban and rural, all types, mixed use, nonprofit, hospitality, energy, water conservation, distributed generation. The smallest project, 68,000. Actually, this slide is now to date because the largest project that just closed a month ago in Dallas was 27 million. On average, about 2 million. And there really is kind of a practical lower threshold projects. I think these smaller ones that are 68, that's kind of a square peg in a round hole, but we made it work. But probably anything less than about $150,000 right now, it probably doesn't make sense for. So that's probably the floor is about 150, and there really is no upper limit. The capital providers that are providing the funding, will advertise that they'll finance projects up to $50, $100 million. There's a large, very noteworthy project in New York City, which launched its PACE program a year ago. Total renovation of a building on Wall Street that I think is $70-80 million. So there's not really a limit because this is private capital that's being used. And all of these have received 100% financing. So the very first project, this was a nonprofit, a house of worship, a synagogue in Austin. And the challenge here is churches, houses of worship have cash flow challenges. Whatever comes in the collection plates is what they have to operate, plus donations. When they have large donations, ironically, this building has solar panels on the roof because a member of the congregation wanted to donate solar panels. Well, HVAC and controls and things like that, are equally important and really should be done first, but aren't as visible. And so these things kind of get kicked down the road. In this case, they couldn't use their child care center because they couldn't control the temperature during the summer. And so they put together a project that was replacing all the HVAC controls. And then they have a large bank of west-facing windows, so window film to reduce heat gain. The project qualified for $11,000 in incentives from Austin Energy. So the assessment total or loan total, $452,000, and this resulted in 20% savings annually. So very significant, and addressed a long-standing problem at this particular facility. A more conventional commercial building in Houston, again, HVAC, building automation system, and conversion to LED lighting. This secured a $30,000 incentive through CenterPoint's rebate program. So $1.3 million project, resulting in 38% annual savings. About a year and a half after this project was completed, the building sold because now it was more attractive to another buyer, another investor, being all upgraded now. And as part of that transaction, the PACE loan, even though it was a relatively new loan, was paid off. So again, that it automatically conveys with ownership, but it can be paid off as part of a transaction. This building in Dallas, the Butler Brothers building, very visible. And this was the largest PACE project until a month ago. As you can see, Dallas City Hall to the right. This is the pond and the fountain in front of it. And this was a building that was constructed early 1900s, originally as a market exchange building. It had fallen into disrepair, and an investor group bought it because of its location and said, we want to turn this into loft apartments and a hotel. And it needed everything. So HVAC, lighting, insulation, windows, plumbing fixtures. And because of the nature of the building, they were able to secure historic tax credits, plus the PACE loan of $23.9 million. And this was interesting because the whole building renovation was over $120 million. And of that, 24 million was PACE. But the interest rate of PACE was much better than the mezzanine financing that they had in their capital stack as part of the original project. So it brought their overall cost of capital down 20% by using PACE. Again, utility savings, very significant for electricity and for water. This project in Rockport, when Hurricane Harvey came through, it wiped out pretty much all the rental housing at Rockport. And so you have service workers that had no place to live and were commuting from Corpus Christi every day. And so this was actually a new development, new apartments on a greenfield. And this is an example where the developer said, we intend to, we need a maintenance facility, a maintenance barn, I think 4 or 6 garage door bays with an office, plumbing and air conditioning as part of our project. So they constructed that first. They got a certificate of occupancy for that first phase, which then made the whole lot eligible for PACE. And then they used PACE, in this case, 2.75 million to go above code. So for lighting, plumbing fixtures, building envelope, if you go above the minimum applicable energy code, then that can qualify those measures for PACE. So significant utility savings and really future-proofing the facility against higher energy and water costs going forward. Finally, I'll highlight this one, the Barfield building in Amarillo. This is a downtown office building, highly visible. And before these windows were put in, you see in the photo, you had plywood boards up. You had birds living in it. It was an eyesore. The city of Amarillo was actually trying to raise money to have it torn down, but a developer bought it and said, I think this is a good opportunity to kind of reinvigorate this corner. And so it is now the Barfield Hotel, which is a boutique hotel under the Marriott Bonvoy brand, ductless variable refrigerant flow HVAC system. That worked in the retrofit of an old building really well because it's hard to go in, and this had no air conditioning. And so going back in and putting in duct work was not really feasible. Low voltage LED lighting, which actually allowed the lighting designers to do some interesting things that are more aesthetically oriented. Water efficiency and the domestic water heating and building envelope too. I've been to this hotel and I can tell you, I stayed in a room. It's very difficult to go back and insulate an old building. So what they did is they basically furred out from the walls and created an insulation cavity on the inside. So the result is it's a very quiet hotel, even on the lower floors. Which is a benefit, obviously, for the occupants. Again, historic tax credits as well as PACE and very significant energy or water savings. So to sum it up, PACE really is a win-win, win-win-win. We think property owners benefit through lower bills, more energy independence, energy efficiency that increases the value of the property. For local contractors, oftentimes they'll be working with an owner and say, here's what your building needs. and it has a price tag that the owner faints from. And this is a financing mechanism that can make this cash flow positive and budget neutral day one. For lenders, this is a low risk loan. If a local lender has Community Redevelopment Act requirements, this can satisfy that. Again, this is reinvesting in the local community, fully collateralized, tax assessment lien status, proved asset value as additional security. At the state level, and why really, I think back in 2013, the legislature decided this was important to enact. It's helping reduce peak demand on the electric grid as the population continues to grow. It provides resiliency and indirectly improves air quality and directly improves water conservation. And then last but not least, from a community or local government perspective, this helps enhance local economic development and jobs, rebuilding, reinvestment, and the result is more appealing building stock and plants that are future-proofed in our environment now. So resources, all of these, everything I've covered and more is on our website. And we're going to go to questions next. And while you're thinking of what those might be, I'm going to jump over to our website and do a little bit of a walkthrough navigation, because these resources are there, but they're not always as easy to find as we think they are. So I'm going to switch over. Okay, so you should be able to see my screen now. This is our website, texaspaceauthority.org. And if you go here, a couple of things, where is PACE? If you click on that, you saw the map earlier, and this has all the cities and the counties. If you click on the different cities and counties, and I'll pull up Dallas, for example, it'll total up if there are projects that have closed. There's a little ticker here that'll show you how many projects, the total dollar investment, the job creation, energy saved, water and gas, and then a calculated CO2 reduction from those energy savings. And so this is for every city and county that's there. And then talks about how it works. If there are projects that have closed, again, case studies that are linked. You can see several of them here. The Butler Brothers building in front of City Hall is one that's featured. Eligibility, this is important for owners that are considering PACE. So you can click on this and quickly go through and determine whether the property that you have is going to be eligible, or if it's not, what needs to happen to make it eligible. The under resources, service provider directory, this is there for your convenience. We make it clear that we don't endorse or recommend, any of these, but it's really a place to start. And if the contractor has gone through our training, then they're listed that way. So you can jump to contractors that are listed here that have done work with their contacts, lenders and capital providers. You can jump to that area. Those that have closed a project have this indication that they financed a project. And certainly new lenders can be added to that list. ITPR, these are the engineers that do those reviews. And then other services that can help with either this Incentive Find is a company based in Houston that can help owners identify all available incentives for these types of projects. So resources there under service provider, under education and outreach, a number of flyers, background here, different webinars, some targeted on economic development. They're all recorded. They're on our YouTube channel, but they're linked here. And then each Thursday at 2, third Thursday at 2, we do a different T5, we call technical training webinars starting back in April of 2020. And the most recent one was just last week on the updated program guide. Those are all recorded and available there. And then different video resources on how all this works. Program documents, things like our program guide, application documents are all here. Tools, a couple of things I want to point out here. There's the financing scenario calculator This is a very interesting tool, and we should probably have it somewhere more visible. But if you're considering PACE as an owner and you are trying to compare that to other options, and the other options being use my own capital and fund it out of that, or do a conventional loan, you can do scenario comparison here. So everything in the gray boxes are variables. So you plug in your own numbers, and I'll just do this to show you how the numbers change. And you can see by changing the numbers, it will show you how PACE compares to self-funded or conventional financing. So you can put in different interest rates, you can put in different terms, and you can figure out, okay, where does PACE make sense, and what would need to happen in terms of the project cost or the percent or the interest rate percentage for it to be a good option. The jump back over to another tool. One that I think from a local government perspective would be very interesting for everyone to do. The Department of Energy has developed this really great tool that pulls together really sophisticated but expensive real estate data for cities and counties around the country, and layers onto that sort of a PACE eligibility template. And you can go to this guide. It's free. It's a really excellent tool. You click on it here. I won't do it now, but it brings up essentially a spreadsheet. You plug in your city, your county, and it runs a report automatically that shows where the best opportunity is to utilize PACE in what building sectors. So it might show that in the food service industry, in the city of Dallas, that's the best opportunity for PACE, and then it quantifies that in terms of number of buildings, building square footage, savings potential. So that kind of assessment and scenario planning can be done there. And that's a new tool that DOE just released. You can see February of this year, and we go to that a lot. Project list. So again, here's the ticker. These are all the projects that have closed in the state of Texas. If you're looking for examples of, okay, what does a PACE project look like? These are the details. There's, again, Butler Brothers at the top, and you can see you can sort it by program, by city, by the assessment amount, the capital provider, the property type, or the different project measures. And each one has a little picture, so you get an idea of what it looks like. And all of those are captured here, and we'll continue to add to that list as more projects close. Events, as we have training events, both those that we schedule and those that we participate in, those are all listed here. In fact, there's our webinar today, right now, May 25th. So good one-stop shop. So I will stop there, and Sean, see what questions or chat have come up in the chat. And I think we've got at least a few minutes to take those, and then certainly you can contact me at any point later.
One of the questions was, will this be available? Yes, we will be posting this within 24 hours, this presentation, and it'll also be on our YouTube channel. So you'll be able to receive that. And I'll also follow up with an email with the resources that Deb has shared and a direct link to our YouTube channel for you to access that. Deb, as we get some other questions in the chat, I'm curious with your work on what's the smallest community you can think of that you've helped and that you've seen a big change? Because, I drive through Texas all the time and go through small towns, and I'm thinking to myself, oh man, we should reach out to them for PACE. Right. And then, as you see these amazing communities that could really utilize this funding opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the size of the communities, just looking at the list, the town of Snyder, which is just south of Lubbock, established PACE at the local level. Dickens County, which is a large county with a small population. Typically, what happens there is there's a property owner that has a project in mind, and they've heard about PACE and think that PACE might be a good match. So they will, go to the mayor or the county judge and say, could you establish this program so we can access it? And in the case of Snyder and some of the smaller towns, city of Paris comes to mind. There are downtown revitalization projects that are maybe the driver. In Dickens County, it was actually a cryptocurrency mining facility being built that is located there because it's sort of at the cross section of a lot of high voltage transmission that brings renewables to that area. And there, the crypto facility is using a liquid cooling mechanism for their mining servers, which is a higher efficiency alternative than air cooling. So a project like that could qualify for PACE. So it's really all over the map, and there's a good opportunity for agricultural efficiency in rural communities. Dairy operations, for example, are very energy intensive. You have pumps, motors, water heating, things like that could be addressed through PACE. So not just buildings, but manufacturing and production operations like that as well.
Thanks for sharing that. Well, we don't have too many other questions coming in. I want to say thank you so much for sharing this information, and those of you who joined us. I know I've learned something, and I always do, especially talking to you, Deb. You have some great information. Before we close, I love to ask if there was just anything that could you share anything that you really enjoy about being in this industry? Kind of like a free kilowatt, as you will. What would you like to share with us?
Is that directed at the audience or me?
It's at you.
Me?
Yeah.
Me. So I don't know. I guess part of my personal philosophy is to leave things better than the way I found them. And I think this really kind of supports that. At a higher level, our built environment in the state of Texas is in the condition it's in because we've always had low energy costs. That's a great thing, for the budget. But if you're trying to look at, how do you cost justify improvements and future-proofing buildings and facilities, then low energy costs, are not the driver. So that's changing. And again, this is pretty much, irreversible at this point. These investments in the grid, they're going to be uplifted to ratepayers. Those are only going up. The commodity cost for energy is only going up. So more than ever, these investments for energy and water retrofits of existing buildings make sense. And again, PACE is a great tool. It's not the silver bullet I wish it were, but it is a great fit in many instances to help those owners, achieve those reinvestments and do it in a cost-effective manner.
Well, thanks again for your time, and thank you all for joining us. And we'll see you next time at our CLC webinar. Have a great day.
Thank you, Sean.